It being 4:30, the House will now consider a petition signed by 10,000 or more persons listed on the business paper. I call the member for Epping.
Yes, thank you, Mr Acting Speaker. In 2016, the Prime Minister spoke on the advantages of the 30-minute city. The concept of the 30-minute city had previously been promoted by the then Minister for Infrastructure, Anthony Albanese, at a National Press Club address in 2014. A bipartisan approach to the delivery of residential opportunities in close proximity to where people work is a goal that has now been adopted by the Greater Sydney Commission in its draft plans for metropolitan Sydney. Travel times to and from work have a direct impact on the quality of family life. Extended periods of time travelling eat into the quality of family time. We urgently need to embrace ideas that improve that quality of life, particularly the need to improve public transport and for this government to deliver affordable housing options, which it is doing. The topic of affordable rental housing is intimately connected with the concept of the 30-minute city. It is inappropriate that our nurses, childcare professionals, teachers, police officers, businessmen and women, and people who work in essential services are required to travel hours each day to reach their place of employment. For instance, a nurse living at Campbelltown, employed at the Royal North Shore Hospital, could estimate that she could spend an hour and 20 minutes every day travelling from home to work, and again the same amount of time from work to home. This government has invested significant sums in improving public transport opportunities within the metropolitan area. After 16 years of New South Wales Labor transport failures and a suffocating lack of transport options, this government is taking countless steps towards a world-class transport network. High-density development, close to railway stations in particular, is designed to ensure that more people have the opportunity to use public transport. With the increased value of these properties adjacent to railway stations, there is an opportunity for this government to ensure that affordable rental housing is provided as part of the solution to the affordable housing crisis and to deliver on the expectations of the 30-minute city. I thank the St Vincent de Paul Society for recognising that there is a growing inability of people to afford to purchase properties close to their place of employment. Oftentimes these employees are struggling to reach the deposit to purchase a property. It is important, however, to recognise that the government is taking measures to help those first-time home buyers, including the abolishment of stamp duty on new and existing homes up to $650,000, stamp duty relief on new and existing homes above $650,000 up to $800,000, $10,000 grants for new homes up to $600,000, abolishing lenders' mortgage insurance duty, increased foreign investor surcharges on stamp duty from 4% to 8% and land tax surcharge from 0.75% to 2%. And it has removed the ability of investors to defer stamp duty when purchasing off the plan. The petition being debated today calls upon the government to deliver a target of 15% of all floor space in new developments to be made available for affordable rental housing. The target is laudable, though it should be accompanied with a word of caution that however the modelling is calculated, this target should not be achieved in such a way that it stagnates the supply market.
In other words, you don't support
inclusionary zoning, as suggested by the St Vincent de Paul Society in its petition, is one model. It is similar to the scheme adopted in New York, where it was first introduced in the 1970s. It is not without fault, and with over 40 years' experimentation, some states in the US have questioned the practicalities of this approach. There is no silver bullet, Mr Speaker, to the problem of housing affordability. Increasing supply is one practical approach. This government has and will continue to make those decisions that people have a home to call their own. Responsible governments in addressing issues of the nature of affordable rental housing must do so against a background of ensuring that there is minimal impact on supply. Against this background, the Greater Sydney Commission has recommended targets of between 5 and 10% to be provided for the purposes of affordable rental housing. Mr Speaker, I will close with the following observation. I am grateful to the members of the St Vincent de Paul Society for the opportunity of presenting this petition. The government is listening to you and are very receptive to improving social and affordable housing opportunities. The New South Wales government is committed to delivering new social, affordable and private housing, and to use social housing as a vehicle for breaking disadvantage, ensuring that we are the biggest state with social housing building programs across the country. I thank the St Vincent de Paul Society for the opportunity to speak on this issue.
I thank the member for Epping. I call the opposition leader.
Thanks, Mr Temporary Speaker. The House is considering a petition from certain citizens requesting legislation mandating a percentage of all new residential developments to be set aside for affordable housing. I should note at the outset that the many, many thousands of signatures on this petition have been gathered by and large by the volunteers from the Society of St Vincent de Paul, many of whom are in the gallery today, and I welcome them. I thank them for their work. For the sake of full disclosure, and lest I be accused of a conflict of interest, I disclose that I and my family do some voluntary work for the St Vincent de Paul Society in our parish, particularly at Christmas time, but far from enough. The leadership of the Society of St Vincent de Paul came to see our deputy leader, the member for Maroubra, and myself some months ago, pushing us on the question of adopting targets for affordable housing in New South Wales. Their case was so compelling that we've adopted their policy. Indeed, I think we've gone a bit further. I'm proud that the Labor Party has committed to a policy of mandating on government-owned land an affordable housing target of 25%. That is, when government land is sold and rezoned for residential development, a Labor government led by me will mandate that 25% of the dwellings will be affordable housing. And on privately developed land, we've adopted a target of 15%. That is, a Labor government led by me will mandate that 15% of new floor space on privately developed land will be affordable housing. I want to thank the member for Epping for being prepared to bring this petition before the House. The petition does not reflect current government policy, so I think it's a matter that stands to the credit of the member for Epping that he's been prepared to bring it. I hope that his government listens, as the Labor opposition has, to the arguments put forward by the St Vincent de Paul Society and matches our ambition when it comes to the adoption of targets for affordable housing. This is one area where the market has failed, and the mantra of just boosting supply has not solved the housing affordability crisis. And here we're dealing particularly with the issue of affordable housing, not the issue of housing affordability. There's a crisis of social and affordable housing in this state that is brought home to those of us in this place every day when we simply cross the road. We, of course, are critical of the sell-offs of public housing properties, particularly around areas like Millers Point. There's a crisis. Why is it that at a time of unprecedented affluence, where the surge of revenues from a Sydney property boom into the state's coffers mean that revenue for the state treasury is literally billions and billions of dollars more than the state has ever received at any point in history, yet so many of our fellow citizens are stuck with unaffordable rents, no hope of ever purchasing a property of their own, forced to sleep at the homes of relatives or friends, often on couches. We need to reflect on that. Extraordinary affluence for the state, but squalor for many of our citizens. And the Labor Party has listened. This need not be a partisan issue. The fact that the member for Epping is prepared to bring this petition on behalf of of all of those thousands of citizens and the members of the St Vincent de Paul Society, I think indicates to us that we can be hopeful here that the adoption of ambitious targets for social and affordable housing can be delivered and can be committed to by both sides of the aisle. That's certainly my hope. In the end, the problem here we seek to address can only be solved by the provision of greater quality and quantity of social and affordable housing stock in this state. I commend the petitioners and thank them for bringing this matter to the House's attention.
I thank the opposition leader and I call the Minister for Planning.
Thank you, Mr Acting Speaker. Can I thank the member for Epping for his tabling of this petition? As housing affordability is something that indeed myself as well as the government, together with the opposition and the crossbenchers, are very passionate about, obviously. I must first start off by saying that I have a great deal of respect for St Vincent de Paul. I pray for them and I ask that you pray for this government and this parliament. And I want to thank you for the great work that you do within our communities. However, in this case, the argument must be made against the mandated 15% targets. Now, targets for affordable housing must be considered in relation to the circumstances of the particular scheme and its potential impact on the deliverability of the development on which it relies. It can be misleading to set unrealistic targets for the achievement of affordable housing without consideration being given to, of course, local market conditions. Delivering the quality and quantity and variety of housing required in New South Wales remains a challenging task for government as well as the development industry. What this government is doing is recognising the need for a sensible and a balanced approach to the increasing affordable housing issue, and it needs to be implemented in a way that doesn't impact on supply. There's no point in having a target that cannot be met. The result will be there is no development and our housing crisis will worsen. This government, and I can assure the House and those present, will work with the Greater Sydney Commission to establish realistic achievable targets for affordable rental housing based on the consideration of economic analysis and the views of all stakeholders involved in delivering new housing. Considering financial feasibility is important to ensure the delivery of the public benefit provided by affordable housing doesn't negatively impact development feasibility nor impede overall housing supply. Mr Acting Speaker, this government has worked collaboratively with stakeholders, including the development industry, to ensure that development, where possible, delivers affordable housing for people on very low and moderate incomes. The application of targets, of course, I think everyone would agree, needs to be fair and just to respond to local conditions. This government has been working hard to achieve record levels of new housing supply to put increasing downward pressure on housing costs, while at the same time considering how we can increase affordable...
Member for Summerhill, come to order.
And this is the issue, Mr Acting Speaker. As usual, on this side of the House, we give that side the respect to be listened to, right? And with respect to that, you know, the issue we have here, can I say, the issue we have here is that under your government, and can I refer...
Speaker. Michael.
Thank you.
Speaker. Deputy Speaker.
I think the member for Newtown had to call.
No, it's not.
No, it's out.
It has to be the opposition. 2 and 2.
Jenny, jump first.
We'll let Michael standing over there.
All right, well, let
If you call me next, you can go.
if that's okay with you. Thank you. Member for Maroubra.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I want to thank Vinnie for bringing this petition to the House. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that this is the biggest audience, 180 people, the biggest public attendance for the discussion of the citizens' petition since the provision was enacted. Well done. Thank you for that, and also thank you for being one of the first bodies, along with others like the Sydney Alliance, the Union Movement, Committee for Sydney and a whole raft of others that came to see me when I became the Shadow Minister for Planning and begged us, on behalf of the people who can't get a start in the housing market, to turn our minds to the issue of housing targets, and we have. So you can take a great deal of credit for the policy that the Labor Party has formulated. It is, with Chris Bowen and Bill Shorten's negative gearing and capital gains tax policy, one of the two limbs that you would pull first to make a huge difference. That the government will be constructing in the next 10 years conservatively 100,000 dwellings on surplus government land. We could have heard today that the government would match our target of 25% of those dwellings to be set aside for people on low, very low or middle incomes, and also key workers and other people like that. They didn't. We hope that they will reconsider, because 25% of 100,000 dwellings is half the waiting list on social housing. It would be a massive fillip to people who are looking for a roof over their heads. In addition to that, the Labor Party has made the promise and made the commitment that if we are elected in March 2019, we'll work with the development industry, who have shown some willingness, I might add, to discuss this matter and to be a part of the solution, and developers have come up with their own models for inclusionary zoning. We'll move to a model where 15% of rezoned dwellings on private land are set aside for affordable housing, and then we'll move to a full-blown inclusionary zoning model working with the development industry. That is our solemn promise. And we do that because first home buyers, people on low, very low and middle income families, are being kept out of the market. The market has failed them. And with all of the money coming in from overseas into investment, and with all of the local investment money from negative gearers and the like, they just don't get a chance. And we can't sit here and say this is something we'll think about, because every single day we do nothing means that property prices are rising and the dream of owning your own home or even renting one affordably gets further and further away. This is a crisis. This is an emergency, and Luke Foley tasked me and others, and I'd like to thank the member for Bankstown, the member for Kira, and the member for Macquarie Fields for being part of a group that has come up with a raft of housing solutions. We won't dally. If we get into government, we'll enact this from day one.
Mr. Speaker.
I thank the member for Maroubra. I call the member from Newtown.
Mr. Speaker.
I seek leave to make a contribution.
Jenny first.
Leave's granted. Ladies first.
Thanks. Eventually I might get to speak. Thank you. I'll remember that. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to rise to contribute on behalf of the Greens to this petition debate and acknowledge my Greens colleague Jamie Parker, who's here in the chamber, and my Greens colleague Tamara Smith, the member for Ballina, and say that the Greens are committed to housing as a human right. We recognise that we should be addressing the issue of housing and approaching the issue of housing in the same way that we do healthcare, in the same way that we do other services, which is to recognise that all people have the right to have a place to call home, and all people have the right to be able to live somewhere where they call home. And what we recognise is that we have seen successive New South Wales governments. Here we've had 6 years of this one, we had 16 years of this one, who all talk now about their willingness to address the housing affordability crisis, but let's put it in perspective. There's been a while that any of them could have acted, and can I say that it is a credit to the community who have got this petition debate here today and who have pushed on the need for inclusionary zoning and setting of a percentage of targets. I can put our percentage out there as 30%, but what you're seeing here is a bidding war on the percentage, and that is a true sign of a community campaign that is moving in the right direction, because people are now talking about how much of a percent they can offer here, how much a percent they can offer here, and what they have accepted is that your commitment to the idea of seeing affordable housing targets set in new developments is actually a way to address the housing affordability crisis. So a massive credit to the St Vincent de Paul Society, to the Sydney Alliance, and to all of the different groups that have been pushing for those targets. It is because of your strong community campaign that we now see this percentage bidding war happening, and you must continue those efforts. And can I say that the Greens will stand with you to make sure that whoever is in government will take action to make sure that we do see these targets delivered for affordable housing. It would be remiss of us to be talking about affordable housing in this place if we did not acknowledge the reality of the tents just outside at the top of Martin Place. It is unacceptable that we have seen this week people come into this chamber in this government that have the ability to act to address homelessness. It is shameful that they have walked past that and are meeting with police to move people on as opposed to actually providing them with housing first and affordable housing that they need. Those people need to be offered permanent housing and they need to be offered community support and social support services. I am sure everybody in the gallery would agree that that is the case, and it is shameful that this government has sat here all week and failed to act on the blight that is sitting out there, not because the people shouldn't be allowed to protest out there and sleep rough out there if they have no choice, but because this government has failed to act to address homelessness, and addressing housing affordability is a key way that we reduce homelessness in our city.
Time has expired, member for Newtown. I call the member for Parramatta.
Mr Speaker, I seek leave to make a contribution to this.
Leave granted?
Yep.
Leave's granted.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. May I start by commending the Society of St Vincent de Paul and acknowledge more than 10,000 people who signed the petition and the people today in the gallery who have a great interest in affordable housing. I also recognise that affordable housing is a significant issue for the state. The Premier Gladys Berejiklian has outlined this as New South Wales Government priority. We have already announced the first homeowner stamp duty exemptions, a $4 billion initiative. Parramatta, like many suburbs in Sydney, suffers from the lack of affordable housing, so this is a timely debate. Make no mistake, there is no silver bullet, no single solution. We need sensible solutions, solutions that are practical. Our approach needs to be balanced to encourage industry and community groups to deliver affordable housing. We need genuine debate between government, community and industry, not political grandstanding. Simply mandating builders to provide affordable housing is risky. We must be careful not to pass on the cost of providing affordable housing to those people who do not qualify for affordable housing, creating further price inflation. Most agree that a major part of the answer is increasing supply. Recently, we announced a Greater Parramatta Priority Precinct delivering 72,000 new dwellings over 20 years. A special infrastructure contribution will ensure that we not only build density, but communities that have access to good transport, healthcare, road upgrades, new schools and open green space. We also need a diversity of supply, different price points. We need to consider changing planning requirements for dwelling sizes and the provision of car parking, and whether this can be offset by proximity to major transport links.
Member for Londonderry.
And it's embarrassing, Mr Speaker, that we have the member for Strathfield being so ignorant about what I say when we have the dignity to respect their contribution. Mr Speaker, let me go on. We also need to consider the opportunity to incentivise the industry to deliver affordable housing by increasing density on appropriate sites, with the cost savings used to provide affordable housing. The government plays an important role in the delivery of more social housing, more dwellings and improved livability and amenity. Take the fantastic work of the Land and Housing Corp led by the capable Anne Skews under the Tilapia Master Plan. This is an exemplar of rejuvenation of public housing stock and the creation of an integrated, public, affordable and private housing community. The Tilapia Master Plan is a 70-30 mix of private and social housing that not only delivers more homes but builds a harmonious community, vibrant and diverse community. And I want to thank Ministers Goward, Roberts and Hazard for their continued support in this project. Again, I thank the Society of St Vincent de Paul, the more than 10,000 signatories for bringing this important debate. I recognise the people in the gallery who take the time to listen to this debate. Thank you.
I thank the member for Parramatta. Is leave granted? Leave's not granted. Member for Bankstown. A discussion on 10,000 signatures of petitions having concluded, private member statements will now be proceeded with. Are there any private member statements?
Speaker.
Member for Seven Hills.
Speaker.